Let me just test. I know that these auditoriums usually have wonderful acoustics. Do they? Folks at the back, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Well, I love auditoriums. So we're going to keep this comfortable and casual. First of all, thank you so much, Professor Vinny, for having me here. It's been about 6 or 7 years since I came here, and it's always a joy. When I was previously here, I was with IBM, and this is now my new avatar at LinkedIn. And where's my intern? I got one intern. Is it in this group? Yay! That's our intern. Welcome to the LinkedIn family. So I'm happy you're here. So we're gonna talk a little bit about context marketing and content marketing. But before I do that, I'm going to weave in a little bit of my story in and out as I talk about marketing, because they are so intertwined. So I want to tell you a little bit about my background. I was, first of all, the most popular question, Virginia, because I was born in Virginia. So that's out of the way. And I was born in Fairfax, Virginia. My dad's older brother named me because I think they had not planned for a little girl. They wanted a Western name. My sister's names are Vandana and Manisha, so that was the unusual one. And my dad, growing up, I grew up in Dubai. So my dad was a commodities trader, but nothing as glamorous as you would expect in terms of stocks or anything like that. He was an import and export trader, and he really traded in commodities, which was in palm oil, edible oils, soaps, etc. And how many of you all have been to Dubai at all? Okay, so you've heard of Old Dubai, Dera area?
Yeah.
So my dad's office was in the Dera area. And to be perfectly honest, as a young girl, I was a little embarrassed where my dad worked, because Dad would work in a trading market, and if you've ever been to Dera, you would see there are these, by the creek, you'll see warehouses, right? So what are the offices there? It's a series of, if you're in the carpet business, it's a bunch of showrooms of all carpets, and that's kind of nice. They're pretty in carpets. And if you're in the garment district, you have beautiful colored clothes, and you've got people doing that. And if you've got gold, the gold market's so beautiful, the spice market. But my dad was like in none of those. His kind of area was more drab, right? It was boxes, and he had a little cabin. And I remember, there's one AC little cabin, otherwise it's a room full of, a big warehouse. And, I never told him this, he's no longer with us, but, I wasn't very proud of where he worked, right? I wanted him to work in a more glamorous, colorful place, and I would envision something a little more like this, as where I would want to set up shop, colorful and beautiful and vibrant and energetic, instead of rows and rows of little warehouses. And I really envisioned a lot of different things going on around me, right? And with the spices and people talking and things like that. I guess as a little girl, and I would play these imaginary shopkeeper games where I would take my mom's dupattas and I would set up in the fabric the little rolls. And I kind of imagine, I know it's weird, but I was an introvert as a child. I would sell fabric, like the way they would roll out the fabric, like "Mami dekhiye" and all that. So and there was no one in the room. It's kind of weird. And then I'd roll it back up, and hours would go by me selling to nobody in the room. But I really kind of had this fascination with marketplaces, right? But that was me as a child. Right? But when you think about me as a business person, as an adult, right, the grown-up version of this, the realities of that really kick in. So let's take this kind of example, right, of a vibrant marketplace where you want to set up shop. And if I was to do this, and let's say I was selling my garments, let's see who would be on the left or right of me. On the left of me is Carl, and he's selling various food goodies. Next to my dad's office used to be, just a sandwich guy that would support that particular market. But in a vibrant market, you've got different types of foods. And, he's selling cotton candy, very cool. And on the right of me is a little gift shop where people can buy hats and belts and earrings. So it's pretty cool, right? I've got my little shop, and on the left and right of me, I've got these cool other shops, and very colorful once again. But you know what? As you look at this, and you look at what really happens during the day in this market, Carl and Gloria are doing better than I, right? Only 3 people have stopped by my little shop, right? And who are those 3 people? Well, the first person that came to check where the bathroom was, right? The second person that came was someone who seemed like they would be interested in fabrics and clothes, but actually were too hungry to pay attention, and they saw Carl's blue stuff, and they just walked over and they left. And the third person that came actually seemed like would be perfect, but was so caught up in taking selfies in the various hats and accessories at Gloria's shop that she got distracted and kind of moved on to take her photographs for her Instagram, etc. Right? So, my little childhood dream in reality doesn't actually, pay the bills, right? You can't actually run a business, a successful business, even though it must have been a nice day out to be able to set up in a nice outdoor shop. So why do I bring this up? This is really weird, long-winded way to tell a story. Is that actually the digital ecosystem is actually not very different than this, right? When you think about when you go online, this is very much of what what you see online in digital marketplaces or platforms. Really a lot of this is very, very similar from an analogy perspective, right? This is the equivalent of that market, right? This is what's happening in the digital advertising space right now, right? It's extremely cluttered, right? You get drowned out, right? You're also concerned about more serious things than just cotton candy, and you're concerned about suspect content. Can you believe what you're buying, whether it's real or not? This has become a huge issue, right? In terms of, for those of you who follow the news, Indifi Bean is an Indian company that lost 70% of its market cap in a day because of a fake WhatsApp message, right? That's a massive thing, and I know the CMO there is a wonderful, wonderful marketer. I think one of the best marketers that I've actually come across. What do you do if you're the CMO of a company that loses its market cap because of WhatsApp, right? 70% of it. And they're going, and they're suing, etc. But who do you sue, right? Because you can't trace back where the fake news came from. And more than anything else, it's sort of the backdrop of your brand. You don't really have any guarantee. I mean, I was lucky that I had a cotton candy store and a accessory store next to me, but I could be next to anybody, right? I could be next to a smelly cheese shop, right? I could be next to, any kind of other thing. So when you think back to the principles of business from 34 years ago, when my dad set up his little, edible oil store, and everybody around him were also in commodities and edibles, whether it be, almonds, etc. There's a rhyme or reason to why business people back then set up communities, why the carpet people were amongst that. It's because when I go into that market, everything in and around that market and that context was centered around wholesale, right? Everything around gold was for gold, right? Wholesale gold. You can't put an edible oil shop next to the gold shop, and so if you look at it, there is some real validity to the way businesses were organized in sort of, my parents' time of import-export, right? And that's why you see a lot of successful business people from that era, right? Versus when you see digital and you see challenges that digital have in monetization profitability. I think that there's something that we can take a little bit from our parents' generation. We joke about them being not digitally savvy, but they certainly made a lot more profit than many of the companies did now. So, when you think about also the specific audience experience of someone walking into that market, I showed you that lady that had come by the store who seemed like a very valid person that could be interested in garments. But, who was she with? Or, for example, who's he with, right? He could be making a decision about a business, a marketing decision or an IT decision or a business decision or a purchase decision. But if he's busy with his family and holding, a pink teddy bear, he's not going to talk to me about infrastructure, right? So being able to actually catch people in their context is very, very important as well, even if you catch them in the right medium, right? I always find it quite remarkable to me when I see people trying to, get friendly in a social media environment, or try to talk shop in a social media environment that doesn't seem like at 10 p.m. at night, I really don't want to get content about what's going on at work, right? If I'm not checking my email, I don't want information in my feed that doesn't support where my head's at. I want to watch funny videos, right? And vice versa. So context is very important. And if you were to come up with context that is relevant to professionals, right, it would end up being something that looks a lot like LinkedIn, right? Because that's the business that LinkedIn's been in 15 years. And so, sometimes and this is the opposite of this, right? If I'm in LinkedIn and I see a chips ad, that would be a little weird for me as well. So it goes both ways. It's not to say that everything works in every context. But I don't want to see food in LinkedIn. I just don't, right? And so part of the work that I have to do with my team is, in addition to all the briefs and all the advertisers we work with, is also talk to advertisers who shouldn't be on the platform because the context is not right for their audiences, right? And there's a lot of times that people say LinkedIn has salaried professionals. They have money, people who have incomes or whatever would have disposable incomes. They would want to buy X, right? Yeah, but that's not the context in which they come to the platform. They haven't come to the platform to buy expensive gifts, right? However, if it's the end of the quarter and you target, salespeople right around the time they get commission, and you target them potentially with a nice jewelry ad, it could work potentially, right? So it's all about also contextualizing once you do decide that you want to do it in terms of the moments in their life that potentially, I've done well, I've gotten a promotion, maybe I should buy a new car. Yeah, that could work. So there are use cases where the context could make sense even though the general use case of selling cars on LinkedIn doesn't, right? So to wrap out what is really going on in the world of digital right now, and I don't like starting with a negative, but this is what we really think is going on, in our industry right now, right? It's this fervor about getting to do digital marketing because it feels like it's a much more cost-effective way, a much more measurable way to do marketing than traditional marketing. And that's why many of you all are here. You're learning this craft. But the issue is that just because you know how to do digital marketing and just because it's more measurable and more cost-effective doesn't mean that it's the right environment, the right audience, or the right engagement, right? And so this is all about what you don't do versus what you do with the skills that you're learning. And I really hope that as you enter industry, that a big part of what you do is you're actually able to understand context of people before you actually make a recommendation around a media mix. Because if you are coin operated and you are in spreadsheets and you're doing CPCs and CPMs, you're no different than a statistician, right? You're no different than an algorithm. That's where your creativity and your understanding of consumer behavior, buyer behavior, audience behavior will play a part. That's why that job of audience strategy will never go away, even if media strategy goes away. Even if media strategy gets automated, audience strategists won't. So I actually think media planning is going to not be a human-centric or people-centric task in a couple of years, but audience strategy will be. So, when I kind of take this a step further, which is around this notion of engaging the right professionals, and I use professionals in the context of what I'm talking about, but right audiences, but also the right way. So let's talk a little bit about what right way really means. Right? So this is the feed. How many of you all I won't ask, I won't shame. I'm presuming everybody has a LinkedIn profile.
Yes.
All right. So a couple of things that you'll find with with your LinkedIn feed. The feed has really evolved in the last couple of years, ever since we went mobile first. We rebuilt the LinkedIn mobile interface, not as an extension of the browser, but a couple of years ago, Jeff, our CEO, basically said if LinkedIn was founded not 15 years ago, but 3 years ago, what would we have built, right? And to do that, you actually have to almost shelf the browser version, and you have to focus on what would that experience be. So our browser experience is actually quite independent of the mobile experience because they're totally different use cases. So if you go to both of them now, they're not connected, right? They actually even show you different things. So really, the fact that in the last 6 or 7 months, let me just go back, sorry. A couple of things that we've done with the feed as an experiment is about a year ago or so, we launched organic video on the platform. And we waited about 6 or 7 months before we actually allowed you to do sponsored videos because we didn't know what members would do with video. We weren't sure whether people would put up cat videos or objectionable. We just didn't know, right? Once you give members the power to put up video, it could be anything at all. And it could be really terrible. And it could really affect the feed. And what we found is the platform really humanized, actually. People started sharing videos about their career successes and failures, advice, a lot of advice, a lot of conversation around specific topics like women telling stories about people from a certain industry. But the trick about video, and this is my one sort of free tip, is people don't watch video on LinkedIn, they read video. And the reason is you're commuting or you're on your way somewhere, it's almost always muted. Whether you're in the office or you're on the train or you're waiting for your cab, you're watching video. So the way video is produced needs to change as well when you're actually in a feed, right? Very different than when you're in a channel, right? So a YouTube channel and what you produce for YouTube is very different than video series produced for LinkedIn. Because you have to really understand the context is that you're part of a daily, I'm finding out what's going on in my life. It's not a news channel, it's not YouTube, it's not a channel, right? It's the feed. So you have to actually make it almost like content in the feed. The only difference is I don't scroll through down. I pause there and I watch it for 30, 60 seconds. And if I want to find out more, I'll go further. But you still read the video. So subtitles very important. And if too much of it is, too much talking, right? People are not going to turn up the video and go into a private room. They're going to move on, right? So that's just a little trick there. So context. I come back to this, right? We started with a story I told you about the market. But let me give you a different way to explain context, if it's still not that clear, and this is more directly to explain it, is there's 2 types of context that we see. There's personal context and there's professional context, right? Now you can say the lines are blurring, blah, 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 people are happy to be both. I do think it's important to be authentic even in the professional context. But the difference is that people invest time when they're in professional networks and they spend time in their personal networks. That's true for all of us. We kind of are passing time, right? When we're, and in different contexts, you don't want to mix the 2, right? So when you're investing your time, you're investing in doing 2 things. That's what we believe. And that's tied to our mission statement. Is that we believe that professionals either want to be productive or successful, or they want to, appear more productive and appear more successful when they're on the platform. That's it. 2 use cases. Any content, any engagement that helps me be more productive or successful, I will do on the platform. I will connect with you. I'll respond to your in-mail. I'll post something. I'll read something if it does one of these 2 things. I'm not there to be entertained. I'm not there to hang out. I'm not there because I have an extra 15 minutes. I'm not there, I'm there to basically do one of these 2 things. That's a mindset, right? When you're spending time, it's really about what's going on with my network. What are people up to? Who's traveling where? What are the photographs? Et cetera, et cetera. Very, very different experience. You're not connecting with your friends and family to be more productive and successful. You're connecting with them to stay connected. right, to your network. And it's entertainment. And entertainment is great, but it doesn't belong here, right? Now there's this whole genre in between called infotainment, and that's certainly blurring, but that's in the nature of the content. It still needs to make me more productive and successful. Okay? So how does this go? This is a very good example. Here's a young lady, a real person, and it's kind of grayed out because with GDPR you don't kind of show names of people. But what you have is she's taken the same post, and I've done this over and over again as an experiment. I've taken the exact same photograph, an exact same post, and she's put it on both on LinkedIn and on Facebook. And it was her giving her first public speaking appearance, right? So very similar to what I'm doing right now. Put two pictures, two different contexts, exactly the same content. But when you look at what was said, right, you'll see that the Facebook thing is, you go girl, emoticon, emoticon, you rock, etc., etc. But the tone of the reaction on LinkedIn will be, well done, this is so inspiring, thank you for sharing, congratulations, successful, right? You're inspiring somebody to be more successful. Same post, same content, same person, right? Different reaction from your network. So I'm not actually saying that you should mostly ever even put the same content. But if you're looking for a certain type of engagement for your brand, let's say you want people to understand a particular point about your brand, you then need to actually put different content on different platforms so that you get the right reaction, right? So, when you think about this is another example of the same, which is really about what is trending. Now, in fairness to this is dated because Facebook no longer does trending content, so this is a little bit old, but it gives you a taste, right? On Facebook, you may be talking about, the Winter Olympics and, Karan Johar, etc. On Twitter, you'll be talking about what's the latest hashtag hug day, apologize RSS, whenever something would have been going on with politics. On LinkedIn, it's going to be, is the 40-hour work week dead? How to keep stars from quitting? How to manage your calendar, etc. Right? So this is a third way to kind of explain the same concept about context. So if I haven't kicked this thing 3 different times, I hope that makes sense now when I talk about context marketing. And why this is important also to me is because as you start posting content for brands that you work for, or even as members, right? It's to keep in mind why people post and how people post, right? And there's no reason why what applies to members and why they do it, why someone representing or covering a company page for a brand needs to understand the context in which people are coming in. So when you look at it as top 5 reasons for content engagement, it's relevant to me, right? So we oftentimes, see a lot of content out there. If the content that you're posting is very self-centric around the brand that you represent, or it's really about that moment where you just want to sell something, I see that a lot, right? I'll see people come onto the platform only when they want to lead, right? They've never really engaged with members, they've never created a piece of thought leadership, they have no real opinion about anything in the world, but they want to let us know about their gift cards or something, right? Nobody cares, right? So you have to actually build a relationship. I see, for example, Nika doing this very well. Nika is building a relationship with women professionals on the platform through advice about, working, etc. And somewhere in there, their brand messaging is integrated. I love that. So it's not to say that a B2C brand can't engage. It needs to be in the context. When I see Mercedes engaging on the platform, Mercedes has a property called Corner Office. And it's really about, you don't have to wait until you have the corner office, but you have to have an aspiration to have the corner office to be able to, think about Mercedes as a brand on your journey. So it's aspirational, right? It's when you have the corner office, but we'll be right there with you, but we'll go on the journey with you. So I think that there's, obviously B2B is the strongest use case with tech, whether it be about AI or blockchain or et cetera, but certainly B2C, there's definitely use cases. One of my other favorite campaigns, is centered around promotions, right? congratulations, Amex did this, right? Congratulations, you got promoted, you deserve a better card. And by the way, share this with, 1 per year with 10 people in your network, because you all deserve to celebrate together. People who helped you along. I think that's wonderful. It's very, very much in the context of me getting promoted. It's very much in the context of my aspiration. And I want to celebrate with my network of people, maybe mentors, maybe ex-bosses, maybe peers, maybe the recruiter, right? So whoever it is, to thank them, right? Gratitude is a great thing on the platform. So, we've talked a lot about the principles of context marketing, but I think, I just want to take a couple of moments to talk a little bit about the audiences on the platform. The platform is much smaller than, for example, a Facebook or a Google, right? But it is 575 million professional members. The global estimate of the white-collar workforce is about 800 million. So we're kind of almost there with mapping the world's white-collar workforce and connecting it to each other. That's democratizing opportunity, right? If you know about almost every job that's out there and companies can find almost every skilled worker out there, that's great. Obviously, we're not going to stop there. There are 3 billion people in the workforce globally. We've got gender demographics in the workforce that's going backwards in India. There's a lot of work to do, but this is a very good place to start, right? But there's other ways to cut this, right? 50 million workers in India, so that's geography. 10 million opinion leaders. These are the people that are publishing content and posts regularly with high level of engagement. Decision makers, senior level influencers. And so it's no surprise that actually, it's a highly concentrated place where a lot of business gets done. It's a little bit more like my dad's workplace, right? The neighborhood that he set up in Dara. So I don't want to say that LinkedIn is like Dara, but quite frankly, there is some similarities, right? It's where real business gets done, because the right people are there with the right context. Now, a couple of things that are important to us that is a little bit less known, which is we are first and foremost a member-first company. And the way we think our relationship with all of you as members is that I actually think the free platform is fantastic. And I think too many people in marketing first and foremost think about marketing as the paid platform, right? It's cheaper, faster, easier, especially if you're an agency, which is send over a media plan, send over a media plan. You can do that, but quite frankly, what I found is when individuals, whether it be marketers or planners, etc., personally love the platform because it's done something for them. You've made a connection, you've gotten your job from there, you've maybe gotten introduced to somebody. You're a little more, you have a little more of a feel of the platform than just treating it like straight up audience media, right? So I would highly encourage you guys to really fall in love with the free platform. It's really good, especially for the life stage that you're in, you're networking, you're kind of getting out there, is make sure that your professional identity is very robust in the way you put your profile together. Make sure you've got a great professional photograph. Make sure you've got a strong summary. Make sure you've got a strong description statement, right? Make sure that you're actually sharing some of the rich media. If you've done amazing papers or presentations here at MICA, make sure you're posting the videos of that. All of that is available, all your extracurricular activities, right? Make sure that you're constantly posting and sharing content about things that you care about, right? You don't have to write long form. Maybe share something that you read. Be useful to your network. Don't just show up when you need something, right? Start using it now as a content sharer. And it's really important because the more you actually read about, the more you'll actually share. That'll help you stay connected because you're being useful. What you'll also find is that the best way to network with industry people like me is read about stuff that I like, right? So read my timeline, read my feed. What am I sharing? If someone comes up to me and says, I really appreciated, the point that you made about blockchain and sexual harassment, which is that post that I put up late last week. That tells me that you kind of care about the things that I care about, or at least have a point of view on it. I'd be interested in what you have to say about that, right? There's a number of people in my network that I've made because I've commented on their post and they've commented on mine. And we have a healthy dialogue, and that's the way we connect. It's not just through in-mails, and I have, 3,500 unread connection requests. That's not who I connect with. I connect with people through the feed, not through just connection requests. So, a couple of more things over here for you as a member, right? The first one is industry news. The LinkedIn Daily Rundown, I think, is a really nice piece of editorial. We don't have an editorial business. This is a totally separate team. The Charlie is our editor for LinkedIn. There's an India editor. I think it's very good, simple news that's shared. I still love long-form posts. I enjoy publishers. Once again, brands can't buy these. Like, it's really, I think we've got 6 million active publishers at a given point that are writing long-form posts. Some are better than others, but they show up in your feed if they have high engagement. You know, I like the influencer program. It's very different. It's not, you know, celebrities. It's totally editorial driven. Not anybody can get into it, and it's only 500 people. So start following some of the influencers. They're very, very interesting in what they share, such as Oprah. Job postings, of course, but what I love about this, if you've ever applied for jobs, is it'll show you new stats, like you're in the top 10% for this job, or how many other people have applied. This is actually really important because I actually think people in India apply for everything, right? And it's kind of remarkable to me because, like, you can see the qualifications, and yeah, maybe it is a little bit humbling to know that there's 600 senior directors that have applied for a role that says, you know, X amount of years of experience. But part of it is also kind of making you understand what's the consideration set, right, that you're up against. It's really, really important that you kind of look at everything that's there. It also shows you things around, you know, whether you're connected to anybody at that company that can make a referral, for example, right? So use applicant insights. It does work, but be judicious about it. Don't apply to every job that's out there. Because all you're doing is you're going to be one of thousands of applications that are going to be not in the top 5 or 10%. And then finally, this is actually my favorite thing, and if you haven't already ever used lynda.com, you know, this is really useful, quick learning modules. There's no certification, etc. It's really easy, quick learning modules, especially when you're all doing your internships. You're going to find that you're going to be thrown in the deep end and expected to know certain stuff very quickly, and you have to figure out how to do it. You know, our intern last year was from IIT Mumbai, but now we've got an intern here, actually really, really used the time that he was with us to be able to go through many of the learning modules and also help many of the full-time folks on the team figure out, you know, what are the right type of courses based on what they wanted to learn at a particular point. So very, very powerful to do that. And all of this is free, right? I mean, we haven't even talked about what you need to do otherwise. So I do think that, you know, please do kind of take full advantage at your career stage or life stage to do that. But I'll kind of end with, like, I started with the most popular question I get asked, which is, who named me? And I'll end with the second most popular question, which is, how does LinkedIn make money? See, you laugh because that's really the second most important question that people ask. And we make money off of 4 areas, which is hire, market, sell, and learn. And you know, I was talking to the folks right before this. You know, about 80% of our business, 70-75% of our business is still a subscription business. We're a freemium business. So it's really built off of hire, which is our recruiter product, sell, which is our sales navigator product, and then our white label learning product, but also premium, which is a member subscription. And about 20-25% of our business comes from media, right? So we are not dependent on advertising revenue to sustain our business. So a lot of times, you know, I think, you know, one of the reasons why we're kind of been able to stay very core to what we do is because we don't have to kind of over-advertise or take on too much advertising into the platform. So the feed is relatively clean, right? In-mails are only every 45 to 60 days. When you look at your feed, it's still very lean in terms of advertising. It's because our business is not dependent. We don't live and die by our advertising business. We do it as a service to brands to reach the members because we actually think that members would value this type of content in the feed. So it's a thriving business. We're doing very, very well, and we'll continue to do that. And you know, I just want to end with, I hope you all saw a little bit about our corporate advertising, and a lot of people, especially to a marketing group like yourselves, I'm happy to answer questions about this in the context of our latest branding activity, but this is our first consumer branding initiative that we've done in a while. We actually had one before this. I'm happy to share at a later point how we think about activating the brand and the purpose of the campaign as well, and how we activate it in various regions. But In It Together is really sort of currently our brand identity, and it's really there to kind of drive activation, not just assuming around certain professions that you could actually be a photographer, you could be a freelancer, you could be a dancer, but really it's about not just helping you get that job, but to become more productive and successful. So that's kind of where we're at. So a lot of different things that I've spoken about, and but I hope two things have landed with you. Number one is context is really important, and so there is something to be learned about what successful businesses do well, which is they position themselves and their distribution and promotion strategies where their audiences are, and that we should be really thinking about that in the digital world. And the second is, the platform is a wonderful free tool for you to kind of grow yourselves in your career and make you more productive and successful. So thank you very much for your honestly, happy to take any questions at all. I can cover anything about my career journey, anything about, really anything. I'm very open. Yes, please. Please introduce yourself and tell me what specialization that you're going to focus on. I'm always interested.
My name is Faz, and hopefully I'll be taking marketing research in second year.
Great.
My question is related to a recent feature that LinkedIn introduced, which is career advice, basically connecting mentors to mentees. I want to understand how's the user engagement of that particular feature, and what are the challenges that you're facing?
Yeah, I don't have the specific data on how it's doing. It's relatively new, actually. And it's really been a beta around this idea of questions. Ask questions, and then you can get an answer. But, it's an extension of essentially the messaging feature in terms of going back and forth. But I don't have the specific data because it's still in beta. And we're playing with a number of different features right now. I don't know if that one will stay or not, but if it works, it'll stay. If not, it'll go. I think what's interesting is that what we're discovering with members and the insight behind that is the fact that it's not scalable. It's not scalable to actually try to have the handful of industry leaders try to mentor people one-on-one. So what you were seeing a lot of people trying to engage with fewer people, and it was overwhelming for those people, and so they were falling off the platform or disengaging. Like, for example, my 3,500 unanswered invitations, right? However, they still want to make themselves available. They just can't do it on a one-on-one basis. So it's really about, and then what we found is that a lot of the questions people had about career advice were common, right? So that's the insight, but it's still early days for the actual feature itself. So, see if it's useful to you, and there'll be another input into whether the feature has longevity or not. Thank you. Other questions? Yes, go ahead. And then we'll come this way. We'll do two here or two.
Thank you for the presentation. My name is Pradeep, and I plan to specialize in advertising and brand management. My question is, LinkedIn released the In It campaign with film companion. So when you're talking about context, the platform there was a YouTube channel which talked about films in general, but then the entire campaign ran on them. So I understood when the interview was Radhika Apte and her career journey, but with others I didn't get why you chose that platform. So if you have a reason for that.
Yeah, sure. So In It, actually, Film Companion was a small element of the broader activation. The films was actually built out by Glitch, and it was actually on TV as well. I have my opinions about it being on TV. This is being recorded, so I can share that. But offline, I'm happy to share my opinion on our TV distribution. The context of actually working with Anupama Chopra and the Women's Series is about actually a focus on certain audiences and communities, which is, I'm presuming you're talking about women at work.
Yeah.
And that, yeah. So a couple of things about that particular initiative. that was essentially for us to look at career journeys of women. And many of them are very well-respected women. And some of, very similar to your reaction, for a lot of women that watched that, they actually wanted more real-life women. They actually wanted people that looked more like maybe me, that, I'm not famous or anything, but I probably look like, a normal white-collar person. So a lot of the feedback there was like, the people were kind of too famous and almost too far away from an average member. But that was a bet that we took, which is to say, if we ended up, it's also, video is very new to us, right? So we're also learning how do you actually produce video in a way that makes sense. So the next version that's coming out are many more mainstream women working professionals that, are more identifiable to the average member. But the form factor performed really well. Video, interviews, the interview format. So we learned a lot about that. But actually the actual campaign had 5 or 6 different elements. That was one. The second one was employee engagement. All of us have our in-it statements. And it was about defining what we're in it for. There was obviously an outdoor element of branding on the way to work. So you would have seen it outdoors, and you would have seen it on TV and digital ads. But the stories are real members. And that one was an interesting experiment. We had a second one that I think was even better. It was called Second Innings. Did you see that one? So what's interesting is this experiment of what is content marketing and what is advertising. So the Women at Work in Second Innings is the content series. Second Innings is people that basically reinvent themselves mid-career and start doing something different. That landed really well because context-wise, people looking to change careers and stuff, but this is the biggest question, right? I've been doing this for 15 years, how can I change now? I'm too far invested. So that one I think went really, a little bit better in terms of how it landed. But the actual engagement was still pretty high for both. People appreciated both. I liked the Second Innings ones better, and I'm excited about what we're going to do next with Women at Work. So, but thank you for the question. Stay tuned. One thing that I will share, sorry, it's a long answer. We're not a big integrated advertising brand. You're not going to see LinkedIn use sort of integrated campaigns to do much. We're a digital company. Like many product-first companies, you experience LinkedIn because you have it on your phone. It's an app. You use it. You're a member. When you've got 575 million members globally, that's actually the best marketing that you can get, which is, you use it. So when we do advertising or marketing, it's probably not as polished like a Unilever. So believe it or not, a company like LinkedIn may not actually necessarily have all its ducks in a row the first time around. I really like the campaign because of its employee engagement component. I felt like a lot of people got very excited. The other thing about advertising and branding campaigns is that it's also an opportunity to get more women to engage on the platform. There is a gender imbalance in terms of women's profile completion versus men's profile completion on the platform. Women are half as likely to put their photographs up there and half as likely to apply for jobs. Women like to be 100% ready when they apply for jobs. Men apply when they're 70% qualified. So it's just the facts, which is women don't apply for anything they don't feel like they can nail on day one. And this is not me saying it. This is what the data shows. So we're trying to get more women to engage on the platform and be a little braver about how they approach their career. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm a second-year student here. I specialize in digital communications. So I do consulting on the side, and I do a lot of consulting for businesses which under 5-man team. So a lot of these businesses, they don't have the resources even to say put up a marketing campaign. So they always look for stopgaps, whether it's like video, content producers, marketing professionals. So here's the problem which I am facing and my clients are facing is, so when they're looking for a partner, right, to partner with, it's taking a very long time to even identify the right partner.
Yeah.
So are you as a platform looking into something for this?
Yeah,
Because
yeah, you're right. I mean, and you're the perfect example of the gig economy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And many people have even day jobs, full-time jobs, and in the evenings also produce video, etc. So there's a product in the US called ProFinder. You may have heard of it, but it's basically about freelancers get connected in with projects and work. And that's a version of that would come to India in the relevant context. So we were first seeing how it kind of fared and what is the flavor of the gig economy, how does that work? And a lot of it is, it's not trying to solve for what Urban Clap, for example, is solving for. It's really solving for what you're describing, which is for businesses as it relates to finding freelancers. But you know, it would basically be a version of ProFinder. So actually, if you go online, you'll be able to find ProFinder now. I'm very excited about that because I think a lot of people are not entirely sure they want to do it full-time at all. I think a lot of people are thinking about doing 3 or 4 freelancing gigs around a specific skill set, and I think that that's the future of work as well. So stay tuned. So you'll get more gigs. What's interesting is that our smaller companies, the 4 or 5 person shops, the question is, are they going to go online to find people? Or are they kind of through word of mouth still? So it depends on how digitally savvy they are in terms of looking at, you know, marketplaces for talent, or can it just be done by someone who's referred by somebody who's referred by somebody? And that's something we have to kind of sense in that market. So we'll watch the dynamics of the gig economy, how it plays out over here. Yeah, great, thank you. I think there was a question over there. Yes, please.
My name is Prithvi, and I was specialized in advertising and brand management. This question regarding to your slide on quality of customer engagement. Do you believe brands get a more restrained response on LinkedIn than on Facebook? Because LinkedIn, at the end of the day, is a professional handle. So a person might be restrained in his response to such. Say it's a slide where he comments on a public speaking unit. So what is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know if it's restrained. I can tell you that LinkedIn members, if they see something that doesn't look like it belongs on LinkedIn, are hardly restrained. I think there's a visceral reaction to, this is not appropriate for LinkedIn. Like if someone does something that feels a little more Facebook-like, I think 40 people in their post will immediately let that person know. So I think there's a protected nature of the context that members drive. There's no brand safety team that will stop you from wishing someone happy anniversary or, you know, you look great in that suit or whatever. But, you know, members do that. You can sit down, sorry. By the way, once you give the question, I feel bad because I have long answers. You should shut up. But I think what does happen is people tend to be a little more cautious about their professional brand when they put a comment out there. They're less likely to have vitriol and negativity. They would answer it the way they would answer it in the office. You know, they wouldn't basically mouth up. I had put out a couple of posts last year, or 6 months ago, around, I don't know, it was something related to gender equality or something, or women in leadership. And there was a young man who, you know, generally it was a pretty heated debate, which I don't think is a problem. And you'll see that it's hardly restrained if you look at some of the comments on my post. But there's one gentleman that was trolling me, like, momentarily, who basically, like, called me a gender reservation activist or something like that, which is about the extent to which but I think the point over there with him, and I responded back and said, I think we can disagree respectfully without calling each other names. And I said, P.S. I know your boss. Because I clicked on his name, I saw where he worked, I saw what department he was in, and I do know his boss. So, you know, it's, and, you know, I was very excited. I had my first troll ever, and then he, like, deleted the post. So that's, the one thing is, like, you can do that. The reality is that he won't ever risk losing his job over picking a fight with me. It's not worth it, right? So I think it's usually the case. But I think that the point is that, you know, you won't say anything on LinkedIn that you wouldn't say around a water cooler in the office environment. You could, but you'd also be that person that would have a, you know, employee, whatever, an HR case against you. So you're probably the same person. It's just that, like, you can't get fired from LinkedIn, but you can get fired from your job. So I think it reflects who people are. If they're not restrained at work, they're not going to be on LinkedIn. I think that there's a few things happening that's interesting with LinkedIn. We've had a large number of members join in the last, like, couple of years. When I joined India, team about 3 years ago. We were at around 24, 26 million. We're at 50 million. We've doubled in 3 years in India. And so I call it the dads on Facebook syndrome. I don't know if you know the word for it. Have you guys seen whose dads joined Facebook in the last 5 years? Do they like share and like their own posts and like dads on Facebook is like really interesting because you can't say anything to dads on Facebook other than but it's hilarious. I think somebody should actually like monitor this. I have a friend of mine who tagged himself in Tokyo and it says, "Bless you, beta, are you in Tokyo?" And he tagged himself in Tokyo. And it's like, "Yes, uncle, I'm in Tokyo." And then he's like, "Oh, wonderful. Are you in Japan?" Like it just went on and on about where he was, and it was like locationally tagged to Tokyo, Japan. So I think the dads on Facebook thing is a little bit on LinkedIn, but different, which is new members coming to Facebook, and new members coming to LinkedIn have previously had experience with Facebook. And so they're using some of their Facebook antics onto LinkedIn, and in the first 3 months, they're very clumsy, much like our dads on Facebook. So that's happening. They're getting, unlike, you can't say anything to dad, but I think people do say things to like, "Good morning, God bless you," Ganesh Chaturthi stuff going on. But like in 3 months, it kind of dies out. Like they kind of figure out and find but the first 3 months are really awkward because, they're full gusto, like I have a LinkedIn profile, retired Army professors, Army officers, they're adorable. Really. They're really mean to retired Army officers because they're so used to like respect and deference, and like LinkedIn doesn't have any kind of hierarchy. It's really shocking to them, but it's interesting. It's fun. It's fun to see what's happening with the platform. I don't know. Maybe I kind of use it for entertainment sometimes. So I'm on it a lot. I think somebody had a question here. Yes, please.
My question was actually on similar lines, but
And your name?
My name is Richa.
Hi.
I want to pursue digital.
Great.
I'm not sure yet.
You're not sure yet? Yeah, sometimes I have that moment as well. So.
So my question is like, the Facebook and LinkedIn, both of them have very different audiences, right? So on LinkedIn, there'll be my boss, there'll be my colleagues, and in front of whom I have to present like a very respectable, approach. While on Facebook, the people I'm connected with are my friends, and they are like family members. So didn't the slide you showed, which had like same post with different comments, reflect on the audience rather than the platform itself?
Yeah, 100%. I think the same. So two things. One is most people that are on LinkedIn are also on Facebook, right? Even if they're your bosses and stuff, you're just not connected with them.
Yeah.
They're there. I'm on Facebook, but I don't usually connect with my current colleagues until I've left the company. So now I'm kind of friends with ex-colleagues, but I don't have a lot of people that I currently work with. A couple of things. When recruiters are kind of doing a quick referral check, they're checking both those platforms and they're checking your Google search results, right? I would highly encourage you to manage your professional and personal brand best by going to Google, typing in your name, maybe every 3 to 6 months, and checking what the related searches are and what the content is up there anyway. So I think that you can't actually separate the two in terms of who you want to be. You need to be authentic and yourself in both contexts, right? So the person that you'll kind of see up here, when you read my posts or you read my long form posts or my articles or my talks, I kind of sound like me everywhere, right? It's just that what I talk about varies, right? So even how I react varies. So for example, if I'm having what happened in the U.S. last week as it relates to the Supreme Court. I'm an American citizen. I pay a lot of taxes in that country. So I have a vested interest in how things fare there. And for the same topic, I may share different articles. My post on LinkedIn would be about blockchain, what we were talking about, and a hypothesis about how blockchain could be an interesting technology to kind of solve some of the information knowledge gap challenges. My post on Facebook may end up being, a little bit different, potentially a little more open about my politics, but also related to the fact that I'm part of groups, with one political party, And when I used to be on Twitter, I'm not anymore. But with Twitter, it was a little more of a venting space about all the crap that's happening in the world. And I got off of it because it was just too negative for me, and it was putting me in a bad headspace. But, so I think some of it is, it's all around the same topic, and they're all my opinions, and I stand by all of them. But, it's the example of, if LinkedIn is what you would do kind of in the office cafeteria, Facebook is what you would do at a barbecue, and Twitter is what you would basically do at the bar, right? So it's a matter of your context in real life also changes about the same topic. So be yourself, be yourself. I think that people assume that you have different contexts. Right? I don't like mixing the context, though. I don't like that whole tool where you can post the same thing to 3 platforms. Disable. Please disable that. Don't be lazy. Don't post the same thing on multiple platforms. Especially when you go, this happens with brands a lot. Brands will use these tools, and like the same post will show up at 10 p.m. at night about, I don't know, some IoT technology, and I'm like, I don't want to see this. Like, this is not interesting. But thank you for your question. Yes?
So ma'am, I had a question. Like, the way LinkedIn functions, it's very different from Facebook. You have a professional network where you're trying to connect with people for better professional opportunities. If we see the closest that comes in the market are the job sites where people try to see job openings. So, do you see any competition in this field which can pose a threat to LinkedIn in the future?
I think that LinkedIn in its complete use case across the board has no competition right now. In different pockets, we have media, etc. So the difference between job sites and LinkedIn is job sites only reveal candidates that are actively looking for jobs. LinkedIn is everybody. And 80% of people are not looking for jobs, actually. But 85% of people are happy to hear from a recruiter about what the opportunity is if they're approached. So it's what we call passive talent, which is, I'm kind of good where I am, but if something interesting goes along, I don't mind having a conversation about it, right? And that doesn't exist on a job board because you'd only go on a job board when you're actively looking. So actually, it's a much smaller pool of candidates. And if you look at usually people who are ultimately getting hired, it's usually people who are not looking, right? It's someone that you have picked from a certain school or a certain industry with a certain background that you're actually want to bring in because they are fit to your business. So the best companies look at who they need for their business. They identify that person through the various analytics on the platform. There's one particular feature in the recruiter product which is called, lookalike candidates. Let's say that you really like me, and I was at IBM for 15 years, and they want to replace me at IBM. You can actually plug in my name and find everybody on LinkedIn that has the most similar background that I do. Right? Basically, and if you look at my pedigree, I've got a very unusual background between my experiences with sales and marketing and tech and media and a couple of graduate degrees, etc. So I think it's a matter of is that an interesting feature? And that is, and it's usually that because you've got my resume on file of everyone that's active, you're able to do that. I think that what'll be interesting in the recruitment or the talent space is not so much job boards. I think what's interesting is some of the new features. When you think about a Glassdoor, it's a very specific thing. It's about employee ratings of how it is you work somewhere. It's not a direct competition, but it's an interesting feature. It's an interesting thing that they add, which is, do they give a run for the money for top companies to work for? Yeah, I mean, in that very small sliver. The referrals tool, there's nothing that really competes with the referrals tool. A lot of people try to build that out. So I think the talent space has been relatively thing. It's pretty competitive on the media space, very competitive. Competitive on the learning space. So yeah, I mean, we can't take anything for granted. But the biggest thing for us is we don't worry too much about competition. We worry about member trust, right? We worry about privacy. We worry about data. We worry about member experience. the number one thing that we have with our members is trust. We are 3 times more trusted than the next social network. 3 times, not by our standards, but by industry trust surveys. Trust right now is like the number one currency in media, because where do you go to find out if a job is real, if an information piece is real? How many places that you can truly say that 100% of, I can mostly trust that what I see in my feed is legitimate and will help me. There aren't very many left anymore, right? Whether it be in the news space, whether it be in so I think that's what we want to preserve, is at no cost will we erode trust. We're little things like we're 100% GDPR compliant globally from May 25th onwards. Even though the requirement was only with the EU, we decided to do it everywhere, right? So it's just we're really paranoid and we like it, so. Yes?
So we saw the age of Facebook and Twitter and movements, and there's been a lot of good things that have come out of social media, especially with the connection globally. We see you like as LinkedIn to work on women at work, but we haven't. I mean, maybe also it's ignorance, but we want to understand that is there a possibility of change in the way leadership works across the globe in terms of equity that can come from LinkedIn in terms of movements?
In terms of movements, let me see if I think about our vision statement, I don't think it solves just at a leadership point. It's a democratization of opportunity, right? Our vision is to create economic opportunity for the world's workforce, right? And if I look at our mission, it's to make the world's professionals more productive and successful. So neither of those really just solves for leadership, right? It's more at the mass level. But I think your question is, how does this solve at the leadership level? Is that how you're thinking?
I think maybe the leadership work can move away. And what I'm saying is that there are things that need to change in the world in terms of giving opportunities to equitably across, and that does not happen.
Agreed.
And so, is there a change that can be brought forward from LinkedIn, like as a community? I know it exists there for economic opportunities.
Right, but is it really
it
happening? Look, I think I'll give you 2 or 3 use cases. I don't think it solves every problem in the world, but it's trying to solve a couple that I think are interesting use cases. But a lot of these are driven by public-private partnerships as well. So let me give you an example. We have a particular piece of data. I mean, we have a lot of data, right? It's all about 2 things. One is, how do you package the data together, and is there someone on the other side that's listening, right? So there are certain governments. The Chilean government, for example, has decided to give a premium license to every one of its citizens as part of their tax benefits. Like, they're paying for it. That's interesting, right? That's a decision by them, that's not a decision by us. But it's because they believe that one of the ways to connect with citizens is by actually getting them all on the platform, on a common platform. Another one, there's markets in Europe, I'm trying to remember which one, it's one of the Nordic countries, but otherwise, that use our talent outflow and inflow reports to drive curriculum of universities. What do I mean by that? We're able to see by country, by city, what skills, not human beings, but skills are leaving and entering a city. So what happens is somebody says, oh, we got to get all the engineers that have Python skills, we need to move to San Francisco. They go, they set up a really expensive kind of shop in San Francisco thinking that the talent is there, or in Bangalore, and they discover that they're competing for talent so heavily that the wages are way too high, the cost of living is way too high, and not everybody wants to move to Bangalore or to San Francisco. So all those skilled Python engineers, if they want a job, they need to move there, and all the companies that are there are there. And that's what creates these traffic issues and other issues with Bangalore or San Francisco, which has caused other issues of haves and have-nots, etc. So we discovered something. We said, okay, did you know that last year, this happened in Australia, a large number of this particular skill set moved to Aberdeen and not to Sydney. So we help companies basically say, why set up an office in Sydney when you could actually set up, that same specific business in Aberdeen, helps other cities, tier 2 cities, set up. We know that there's skills that have moved in there, whether it be because its spouse is following somebody or whatever reasons, or university, to actually take the jobs to that city, so people don't have to relocate. It's great for companies, because companies no longer have to pay the relocation. It's great for tier 2 cities. It's great for tier 1 cities because they're not having everybody move to the tier 1 cities. And it's basically working backwards from where skills are already moving. But it also actually tells you, like I did this piece of work with Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka had a huge issue after the war was over in 2009. They had rebuilt by 2012 or 13, and they wanted the diaspora to come back, right? A lot of Sri Lankans left during the war, and they've now rebuilt the country, and now they need leadership, Sinhalese leadership to come back. Many of those people moved to Australia, they moved to the UK, they moved to the US, and they've been gone for like 20 years, right? The war was something like that. They were doing paper ads to find C-suite executives to come into Sri Lanka. They were bringing in expats, right, who were just in the area, Singapore or India or whatever, to come in. So we said, well, here's a map of all the Sinhalese speakers around the world and what skills that they have and when they left and when they graduated from a particular university in Sri Lanka. Is that useful? And can you target those? There's only about 980,000 of them globally, but we know all of them, right? Can you build a relationship through the platform with people that left 20 years ago and say, come back to your country, come run the bank or the telco or whatever and find opportunity? Can you actually engage with them in a meaningful way to make Sinhalese people come back and run their country, right? That's very powerful, right? And you don't need to use paper ads to do that. That's a one-on-one engagement with people based on their entire career and work history. What you also can see is what skills would they bring with them if you were able to bring them back? Because these are skills that they could bring to the country. And you would actually first and foremost focus on those people that bring in skills that are leaving the country. So those are the kinds of ways, one of the many ways that we use the data. Obviously, you know, the list can go on and on. But I don't think that there's macro issues, there's micro issues, right? There's no one solving. Data is data until it's put to use the right way. This is called economic graph data. So the economic graph is data that is available to be able to map all the members to all their workplaces, whether it be full-time or part-time, to all the schools that they attended, to all the skills that they have, to all the conversations they have, to be able to say, okay, well, if this is the world's economic graph, how would capital, whether it be labor or intellectual capital or financial capital, move around if you're able to just have the data mapped? But LinkedIn is probably not going to be the ones that are going to force people to do things. It's going to be, if Sri Lanka wants to bring back their diaspora, they have to take the actions to then attract them back. We can just provide them with the avenue. It's just the beginning, though, right? What I like is, I know this sounds kind of like a company girl, but you know, it's important to me that the company that I work for is very purpose-driven around something that I care about, right? I'm not an entertainer, right? I'm a glutton for information. I'm curious. I want things to be a certain, you know, the world to go in a certain way. I'm a first-generation working woman, you know. My sisters and I. So, you know, I want to be aligned with a place that brings economic opportunity. So, that starts right. That starts there. Thank you for the question. Anyone else? Great. Any questions about my career or any career advice? Anybody? Somebody asked a question about career advice. You have captive me to give any career advice as well. Okay, great. Thank you so much for your time.